was interesting. Uh, and he had playing cards in the film. What is the significance of playing cards in hoodoo?
Okay. So there's a cultural significance, which is, like I say, is the parent of the spiritual aspect. Culturally, playing cards is synonymous with the want to have financial freedom.
Hmm.
So they are associated with
Like gambling,
gambling,
maybe? Yeah, okay. Right.
and many games. I found several slave narratives referencing this,
Hmm.
and through the birth, I'm sorry, through this concept
Hmm.
of having cards readily available and also using it as a technique or as a tool rather to survive.
Wise the dumb, can't put the two before the one. Wisdom is water, I'm the daughter of the cannon fodder. Applied knowledge and insight, a born scholar. Look like a martyr to marauders like Tartar. Wise owl slaughter, whack MCs order applauder. Original woman, decipher the womb. Crown of creation, fruit of the planet, earth and the
Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Wild the Dome TV. Today, I have a very, very special guest with an amazing topic. You've seen her on this show before. She's grown up with hoodoo as part of her tradition and practice. She's extremely knowledgeable. She has a very strong presence online and offline when it comes to hoodoo and guiding people and teaching people. And so we're definitely appreciative of her time. Mama Yana, thank you for coming through. We definitely appreciate you.
He's happy to be here and thank you for inviting me again for another episode. So honored and happy to share with you all and to share with you. And I thank you for acknowledging and, just wanting to see what I got to say. It was
Absolutely.
heartwarming.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, definitely. I definitely appreciate you. As we know, the movie Sinners has looks like made over 200 million at the box office.
Man.
Yeah, a lot of people are, just talking about the movie. There's so many different layers to the movie. And we're kind of going to focus on some of the cultural things and some of the hoodoo aspects of it, but not just necessarily hoodoo, but just again some of the overall cultural dynamics that are going on in the movie that a lot of people may not have caught. And so
Hmm.
I'm definitely excited to have this conversation. Um, First, like, what did you think? Oh, what did you think about the movie? What was, did you like the movie? Are you a fan of the movie? What did you think whenever you saw it?
I love the movie. Love, love, love the movie. The reason why is because I'm a person who believes that the parent of any tradition, any religion, is its culture.
Mm,
And Ryan Krugler and his wife, they actually were together in this project.
hmm
Although Ryan is getting a lot of the shine, um, they decided to ensure that they capture the cultural aspect of the movie. I watched
hmm
an interview with him, and he specifically said that it is important for him to preserve the Black culture. And he did that very well, in my opinion, with this movie. And I caught so many different cultural aspects in regarding the movie. Now, considering it is at a time period in 1930s, uh, and it is in relation to the supernatural, in addition to African American culture. There are ties to hoodoo because at that time, this was is literally um, very much um, out there at that
hmm
time. Hoodoo is very much out there at that time in the 1930s. So I can see, especially since the fact it's a horror movie, supernatural, you cannot leave that aspect out, especially if you want to preserve the culture of African Americans. So I absolutely loved it. I caught many things. beginning scenes, omens
Mhm.
that I grew up with.
Mhm.
Um, Man, even there was a scene where there was a snake
Mhm.
killed in the beginning of the scene.
Mhm.
Towards the beginning of the movie, before everything went down. And I said, "Oh my God, that's an omen."
Mhm.
And I said, there's going to either be a happy ending or a happy medium as it
Mhm.
relates to this movie. And usually in Hoodoo, according to Hoodoo, if you kill the first snake that you see, especially in spring, it means you're going to defeat your enemies.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, okay. That's what time we're on.
Dope. Oh, no, that's dope. That's dope. See, that's why see, again, that's why I'm having you on because these are things that most of us may not pick up on. And once you are made aware, it just makes, uh, the movie that much more rich and also takes it back to our culture, and inspires us to continue to learn about some of the practices of our ancestors, and it makes you it connects you to them. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
the things that we heard from our grandparents that we may not have known came from a hoodoo tradition. Because I can think of things now that I was told by my grandmother and great grandmother that were just normal things around the house growing up. But you see now, the more we study and the more we learn, we're rooted in different hoodoo traditions. And so just a fascinating and very layered topic. Some viewers, I was watching a podcast and they were speaking about they were in the theaters, watching the movie, and uh, a sister who was a Christian, reportedly had gotten up and walked out of the film because she was saying that it was demonic. Um, what would you say about those who may be of the Christian faith who are, kind of viewing this movie as being demonic and threatening?
Okay. Interesting that she would call the film demonic, considering the title of the
Hmm.
film
Hmm.
and
Right.
considering the genre of the film. And so the title of the film is called Sinners for a reason. Every one of of the characters, rather, are expressing the seven deadly sins. Now, if you're Christian, you're familiar with that is. And that should click to most Christians if they're going to go see the movie Sinners. In addition to the fact that it is a horror movie, it is a cultural based movie as well. It is designed to be of the supernatural, to reflect human nature through all of the characters and the events. And whenever that happens, it makes you go into a form of self-reflection. And if there is anyone, no matter what type of religion you may be a part of, and you were sitting in that movie and considering the basis of the movie and the foundation of the movie, if you felt uncomfortable, that is typically an indication that you are struggling with something that is within in you. Because said that that was the point. The point is to paint reality and to paint what was currently happening at that time. There was a lot of demonic things going on. There was a lot of sinister things going on. It is based off of the struggles of African American people during the time of Jim Crow.
Right.
So the more that subject was focused on in the movie, which was one of the main subjects,
Hmm.
um, it will conjure up that energy as well. So with that being said, if you are of any religion, Christian, Muslim, or anything like that, and you are troubled watching this movie, that is your sign that you may need to go and talk to your spirits or whomever give you salvation to try to get through the problems that you're currently you have. Because just because you are of a certain faith does not mean that you're perfect. And that movie does reflect that. It reflects that. It's a
And
very powerful movie.
and also too, uh, what the hell is more demonic than Jim Crow and the transatlantic slave trade, right? You know what I'm saying?
I I'll give you another one. That's
Mhm.
like saying they will refuse to read the book of Leviticus.
Mm,
So would you close your book on that? Would you
mhm,
close your book on the book of Exodus and so on and so forth? Because there's a lot going on in that Bible.
right, because like a lot of, well, that's what I was going to ask you too. That's even not understanding a lot of the syncretism that was happening with
Hmm.
hoodoo practices and Christianity, right?
Absolutely. It was a lot of syncretism in there. There's a part where Annie was, reawakening and refreshing the mojo bag that was made to keep smoke alive. And she literally recited something that we typically do in hoodoo, um, which is an incantation that is based off of the book of Matthew.
Mm,
It's a verse that is within the book of Matthew when she said, "Bone of my own, blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh." These are indicators of the biblical and the Abrahamic aspects that is ingrained within hoodoo, considering the cultural aspects of what was going on within, that time. It's what people don't know is that there was a good job, so much of a good job done on that movie in the cultural aspect. They can't even see the ingrained um, Abrahamic influences that is in of this nation and of the society even back then.
mhm.
So I say, if you were Christian and you felt like you had to get up, then that means you feel as though that you need to get up from your own society. You are
Mhm.
running away. You're something that you want to run away from. But the movie tells you not to. You have
Right.
to fight, in order to survive here.
In,
So,
indeed. You wrote about Annie's beaded necklace, and
mhm.
could you share the significance of her necklace in the context of hoodoo and cultural memory in this movie?
Okay, yes. So I have one of them on.
Mm,
And been wearing Job's Tears for a long time. This is one of um, the type of necklaces a hoodoo practitioner will actually wear, and the relation as it connects us with faith. These are Job's tears
mm,
from the book of Job and from the character Job in the Bible.
mhm,
And in a biblical context, wearing Job's tears teaches you to not be a victim of your conditions of life, but you have to push through and do not be, accept the victim mentality, blaming everyone else and blaming God is punishing you for no reason and so on and so forth. Therefore, you will fall. When you wear, and when Job, because that's what he did in the Bible, he cried a lot of tears. He was and in so much sorrow, he blamed God.
mhm,
And then when he finally woke up and said, "You know what? I can't blame God," um, his life became better. But it was considered a sin to blame others
mm,
instead of fight and get up, and to have the upliftment of self.
mm,
Hence why we have prominent spirits in our tradition, High John. High John actually serves of that. He is said to be the spirit of laughter. They say if High John is around, there everyone is going to be laughing. He lifts up spirit. He gives people hope, but most importantly, faith,
Mm,
not to be a prisoner of hope.
mhm,
And so these, when consecrated and worn, helps you with that aspect of life. You will notice a lot of, if you notice the character Annie, she was very realistic. She
mhm,
wasn't afraid per se to die.
mhm,
She was willing to be heartless
mhm,
in order to save those who were around.
mm.
Um, and she gave a lot. You need faith. You need compassion and understanding in order to do that. And so these help you with that. So you will notice those who practice hoodoo, if you will notice a lot of those people, if they're wearing these, they tend to have those characteristics.
Indeed, and you and the article that you wrote, I wanted to just share this part of it because
Mm-hmm.
it just our folklore and our ideas that date back, even to times on the plantation, just shows
Mm-hmm.
that we're not these concepts aren't just coming out of thin air. And one of them was
Absolutely.
it was a slave narrative uh, by a
Mm-hmm.
woman in Saluda, North Carolina. Um, February has but 28 days because Job, in his suffering, asked that the day of his birth be dropped from the calendar. He was born from the 29th to the 30th of February, and these 2 days were dropped from the calendar except on leap year when the Lord tax on an extra day to give the devil another chance. And this was from
Mm-hmm.
actual, our one of our ancestors on the plantation in North Carolina, right?
Yes.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
just wanted to kind of share that part of your write-up because again, I don't want people to think that again a lot of these traditions are again being made up out of nowhere. These
Absolutely.
are absolutely ancestral. You also mentioned in uh, your article about Job's tears, um, the connection of I guess sin and suffering.
Yes.
Could you talk about that too?
So, according to the book of Job, um, and how Hoodoo see it, you know, it is sinful to just wallow.
Hmm.
That means you will embrace sin. The more you embrace sin, you embrace unhappiness, and when you embrace unhappiness, you embrace what? The blues.
Hmm.
So you see that the blues is a huge concept in the in the movie Sinners. um One of the main characters, Delta Slim, is based off of Howlin' Wolf, and Howlin' Wolf said himself, if you ain't got no money, you got the blues, you know. And if you can't do for yourself, you got the blues. Um, a lot of the things that sinners concentrated on was the want for financial freedom as well. That's why they spoke a lot about freedom. And in this country, the capitalist country that we have, um, it seems as though that is the goal for everyone, is
Right.
to have financial freedom, because to have financial freedom, as the blues would say, would be happiness.
Hmm.
Um, Although happiness is a state of mind. And in Hoodoo, it is said you don't give up. You have to keep going. You should not settle for mediocrity. You need to find a way to get ahead in order to survive within this society, within the nation, which is a capitalist country. It's built off making money. And you see that theme all throughout the movie as well, making money, making money. And if you don't make enough money, what happens? You succumb to what is perceived to be sin.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Indeed, indeed. And so also in your writing, well, in the movie, we saw all right, they were. vampires. And um, people may not know, but even in hoodoo, there is an idea and concept of vampires. And in your writing, you mentioned that in hoodoo, a vampire and a witch can be seen as synonymous, and that the witch is often mistaken for a haint. Could you unpack what haints are and what vampire or slash witch represents in hoodoo tradition?
Yes. So there are supernatural spirits that exist in the pantheon of hoodoo. Many of them have some of the same characteristics. And so, like the vampire, um, a witch or a buhag, which was actually mentioned in Sinners, has the ability to suck your blood and take you out while you're sleeping. They will sit on your chest, put you in sleep paralysis. And it is said that they will even take the breaths of babies.
Mm.
This is something a lot of people, I'm sure, would remember their grandmother saying, "Don't have that cat around,"
Yeah.
so on and so forth. Don't have the cat around a baby because
Hmm.
it's going to take his breath. This is because it is said that buhags are able to, also called witches, we call them witch, to shapeshift or take the skins of people in addition to animals. They will take the skins of them. Um, and that is a little bit synonymous with the vampire, considering they are blood suckers.
Yeah.
Said to come out only at night.
Hmm.
Bullheads can be out during the day in the skins. However, the vampire would come out at night and is similar to a haint type spirit called the Plat Eye. And the Plat Eye came out only at night and would have red glowing eyes. Also have the ability to shapeshift and also would lure people with many different things into outside, into the woods, into the swamps, things of that sort. Even um, with their voice, they would lure with music, so on and so forth. So there is
That's
an
interesting.
interchangeable,
Mm.
yes, it's an interchangeable understanding of these spirits. And I can understand why Annie did not completely narrow it down. She was very
Yeah.
hot in the beginning, but I
Hmm.
can understand why she did not completely narrow it down. When you are able to figure out exactly what it is, you know exactly how to fight it. Um, there's also a scene um, where all of these spirits that I just named, um, including wandering spirits that are looking to take you to the other side, and they're not always necessarily bad. They just want to take you with them to have you as company. And if you understand what I mean by taking you to the other side, um, you will understand that sometimes these can be even the dearly departed that hasn't elevated to ancestors yet. But um, and there is a scene where Annie said, "Why is it that you need an invite to come in here?"
Yeah. Mhm. I was going to ask you
All
about
of
that.
Yes, all of those spirits are said to need an invite to come into your home, and also not only that, to be allowed to be a parasite, to suck onto you, to latch onto you. We call them spiritual attachments. So that's why they say if you hear your name called and you're not sure who it is, do not answer, because it is said that
Hmm.
you are giving that spirit permission to be with you. Um, if you hear three knocks at the door or knocks at the door in the middle of the night, and you are not supposed to open up the door, because it means you're giving the spirit permission to come into your home. Um, there's lore in stories and hoodoo that actually talks about this concept where the devil comes knocking at your door after you sell your soul to the devil
Yeah.
at the
My
crossroads
my
after
grandmother
seven
used to tell
years.
those stories when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So you don't open up the door. That is also a metaphor with opening the door to negative energy, negative spirits, and low level vibrational spirits as well. How one will open a door is to accept in the things that will plague you to vices, or even the seven deadly sins. It's like if you keep calling it, that means you're going, oh, well, if you keep luring it in, it's going to call you
Hmm.
to, and if it calls you and you let it in, then it will take over you. It will
Hmm.
take over you. So this is um, how spiritual practitioners or hoodoos, when we try to figure out the root of a problem where someone may be acting crazy or there may be some things going on with them, um, sometimes that person actually has a spiritual attachment due to them participating in low vibrational activities, allowing for the spirit to be with them. Because they say in order for that to happen, you got to be vibrating low. It's like if you're vibrating high, then they can't get you, and so on and so forth. So it's permission. It's all about permission.
What I also like to, and what you when you wrote about this, you also added a quote from cultural anthropologist, author, and initiate herself, Zora Neale Hurston, who
Hmm.
said the Bahamian hag is the witch and the vampire. Hags suck the blood out of babies. They abuse sleepers, sometimes kill them. They come to your bedside and tell you bad things. When you wake up, you think you had a bad dream. They send you to do evil. When they go hagging, they slip out of their skin and fold them up. And so again, I just wanted the people to understand these aren't ideas and concepts that are just come out of thin air. These are ancestral and have existed, you know, since the days of the plantation. Um,
Hmm.
One thing that was interesting. Uh, And he had playing cards in the film. What is the significance of playing cards in Hoodoo?
Okay. So there's a cultural significance, which is, like I say, is the parent of the spiritual aspect. Culturally, playing cards is synonymous with the want to have financial freedom.
Hmm.
So they are associated with
Like gambling, maybe? Yeah, okay. Right.
gambling, and many games. I found several slave narratives referencing this,
Hmm.
and through the birth. I'm sorry, through this concept
Hmm.
of having cards readily available and also using it as a technique or as a tool, rather, to survive, to have financial freedom. Playing cards created a way to, was actually used and created to divine with. That's what I'm trying to say.
Hmm.
So we would divine with with anything that was easily accessible, and
Yeah.
we were able to understand these things. Playing cards was one of those things that's easily accessible, that was connected to our everyday life. It's connected to our everyday survival, uh, and so the deck of cards plays a very significant part of the movie in a cultural aspect, but also can be connected to the divination aspect. Um, hmm. There's also um, also some slave narrative I also found where even playing card meanings was
Mm.
actually expressed in the narratives as it relates to divination
Mm.
methods.
Mm.
In addition to that, um, playing cards and gambling, as well as divination, can go hand in hand. Um, as a way that some of the birthing methods are the same. When you divine with cards, you have to assign it a spirit or you give it gifts the cards have to understand what is going to speak through them. And both with the gambler and the card diviner, there is a common technique of burying the cards in the cemetery so that the spirits can speak
Hmm.
through them.
Hmm.
And with the gambler, they would bury the cards in the cemetery with someone that had good luck, who was a good gambler or even
Wow.
wealthy.
Wow.
Yes. So that is also noted. Um, with the hoodoo practitioner, they would you in the diviner, they would bury it in certain places in the cemetery. I don't want to disclose too many secrets
Yeah.
because I don't want everybody going out there burying cars and going into the cemetery. But it's a similar concept and logic with the two.
Mhm. Let me ask you a question, because I just kind of thought of this, and it's kind of outside of what the movie is. But when we look at different practices that are African or African American, whether it be from voodoo to the Nation of Islam, to all of these cultural expressions that we have as a people, there's always a form of a little bit of gatekeeping where you got to be a part of this to know some of the inner workings of it, right?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
is that does that apply with hoodoo?
Absolutely. You
Mm,
do. Because voodoo gets very deep.
mm-hmm,
It gets very deep. And like any tradition, everyone is not appointed to be the one to lead and also take care of others.
mm-hmm,
And so with the information that a knowledgeable, skilled worker may have, you have to be careful with whom you give that to, how deep you may go. Many people believe that I say a lot of information, I give a lot of information. To me, it's surface level. I
mm-hmm.
haven't given any secrets.
Yeah.
That's why to me, it's very surface level because um, many of the things that I express, I have the ability to back up
Mm-hmm.
through documentation, you
Yes.
see.
Because you
So
definitely
to
mentioned the slave narratives and all of these things. And I was like, yeah, that's what I like. But go
Yes, I will pull up
ahead.
newspaper articles. I will pull up narratives. I will compare and contrast even with my own family.
Hmm.
And I understand how to use my discernment,
Hmm.
um, in regards to the research of hoodoo. Um, and so, with that being said, there is also an understanding that you have to adopt when it comes to lineages as well. And this is in relation to all traditions,
Hmm.
all lineages, even within the same tradition or religion, isn't the same because people don't understand that there are subgroups or other lineages within the same religion or tradition. And so some people have to be careful
Mm.
with how much they express because it may actually only apply to the secrets of your lineage as well. Um, and also, it takes someone who has the knowledge to understand how to apply what is being taught as well. So when I say that, the knowledge is internal as well, which means you have to go through rites of passages
Mm.
to actually accept the knowledge that may be passed down to you.
Yes.
There are certain rituals you have to spiritually understand. And if you don't go through the rites of passage, usually through ritual, you may not be able to spiritually understand it in order to work it as well. So that's another reason why things are gate kept too.
Now, is there anything like I'll give you an example, um, like with the 5 percenters, the like you can most 5 percenters can trace who how they got uh, knowledge itself through their teacher and their quote unquote lineage, meaning my teacher was taught by this teacher who was taught by this teacher. You can also do that with like stuff like in martial arts, Jeet Kune Do, where certain Sifus can trace their lineage back to Bruce Lee, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I know Hoodoo is probably a little bit different just because of it was it was culturally ingrained, in Midwest and the South. But like now, is that a thing where you can where people will say, hey, I was taught by this person, or like is that a thing that exists within Hoodoo that can kind of let people know, I guess, that this person is legit just because of who they're associated with?
Yes, that is a thing, you know. Um, Usually this thing or this aspect of hoodoo um comes from people who it's interesting that you mentioned other traditions, you
Hmm.
know. Um and so this thing usually comes from people who were spiritual leaders and they decided to take people into their temples, such
Mm.
as Mother Leafy Anderson, such as Noble Jew Ali as
Mm.
well, who is
Hmm.
actually considered in at that time was said to be a hoodoo and a conjure man. They
Wow.
call him a conjure man.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Hmm.
They called him that. Um, his secrets of his own came from studies of elders, but also he created something new to birth something new.
Yeah.
So he would technically be the start of his own,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
He will be the start, but it doesn't mean that his knowledge did not come from others.
Hmm.
What he did is he birthed something through the synchronization of understanding other aspects of things. Excuse me, I got allergies.
No, I understand. I do too.
Oh, Lord. So, um, this generational thing can also apply to also families.
Mm.
But from what I have seen, this is something that should be a lineage unbroken
Hmm.
when it comes to the families because you can lose a lot in one generation,
Yeah, right.
a whole lot.
Hmm.
Um, and if it's not directly passed down from person to person to person to person, there's a lot of brokenness
Mm.
that may actually happen.
Hmm.
Uh, and so you will find the scarcity in that. But
Hmm.
I also want to say this: there is a difference between actively being a practitioner of hoodoo
Hmm.
and growing up in hoodoo culture.
Yes. Can you expound on that a little bit?
So, considering hoodoo is ingrained within African American culture because hoodoo is based off the survival within the US. Um, all African Americans grew up with these concepts, these customs, these taboos, um,
Mm.
and all of these understandings, but they may not know how to practice. They may
Hmm.
not know the application of the mysticism that comes with that. That's a different category. Everyone isn't a doctor who has specialties in healing. There's the title doctor. Everyone is not a mystic or a professor. Those are specific titles. Everyone is not a conjure man or conjure woman who has
Now, when you
the
say doctor and
understand.
professor, are those specific titles within Hoodoo?
Those are
Oh yeah, we're gonna have
those
to
are
get into that. But go ahead.
yes,
All right.
those are specific titles. Um,
Because I've heard
not
of
so
Dr.
from
Buzzard.
yes.
Mm.
Um, how you receive your title is based off of your specialty.
Mm. Hmm.
And the community gives you that title based off of your work. So your
Hmm.
work is proven and tested and proven. So that's how you get your title. Your title, even with the title mama or mother.
Hmm.
Mama is one, and then there's mother. That's another.
Mm.
Mama is usually the community helper. Mama is usually the one that can be a jack of all trades, and many people comes to her for advice, teachings, and she's able to do a lot for the community. So usually a person like that would be called mama. A mother is usually synonymous with those who were of the spiritualist church
Mm.
that had some form of Catholic background.
Mm.
And those in the spiritualist church, if you become a mother of the spiritualist church or temple, which is a aspect of Hoodoo spiritualism, um, all spiritualists are mediums that are able to talk to the dead and things of that sort and get mounted by the dead. This is one area of Hoodoo. They go through a form of initiation themselves, and if the mother passes away, um, she is buried in her initiatory crown
Mm.
as well. And so, Mother Catherine Seals, I have a picture of her in her initiatory crown when she was buried.
Wow.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so if a person has been proven and has been tested, um, they may create a temple. They may not. Those who created a temple will tend to have people that come after them, predecessors, and they're able to trace the lineage through that way. And the predecessor's job is to keep everything up
Yeah.
from generation to generation to generation.
Indeed. Indeed. You also wrote about how I guess at the juke joint, Sammy introduces himself as Sammy the sharecropper from the sunflower plantation. What can you tell us about the sunflower plantation and why that was significant in the movie?
Oh, Lord. Sunflower Plantation is right outside of Clarksdale, Mississippi.
I'm listening.
And the Sunflower Plantation is a real place.
Mm.
So I provided pictures and things of
Hmm.
that sort.
Hmm.
Um, and the Sunflower Plantation, which is separate from the Sunflower River, which is, connected to the Mississippi Delta area. Um, that area is said to be the area where another aspect of a vampire was born here in the US as
Mm.
well.
Hmm.
So let me go back.
Hmm.
There were sharecroppers that worked on a sunflower plantation. And in that area, um, there was a notation before there were there was a note that those who once were enslaved or during antebellum time, that the white slave owners bragged about having so many slaves and they had a lot of money.
Hmm.
And the white enslaved people actually said, and would be kind of a little bit braggadocious of being part Irish, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
And so, considering that fact, we have the Irish there, so we understand where the Irish vampires came from. But to really understand where the aspect of the vampires came from is the fact that that area is documented to say, what they said that is where some of the first white settlers came to be, as well of the Mississippi River in
Wow.
that area.
Hmm.
They were met by the Choctaw Native Americans.
Hmm.
They wasn't having it, of course.
Right.
They got their spears, they got their stakes, they got very sharp arrows that can pierce the armor of the settlers or the quote unquote explorers.
Hmm.
And in exchange, the settlers said, in exchange of you letting me pass, because Mississippi ain't no joke. That's the Nile of the U.S. It's huge,
Hmm. Hmm.
but they couldn't pass. They said to the Choctaw, in exchange of you letting me pass, I will give you everlasting life.
Mm,
Everlasting life. So you see how the vampires in the movie is making these promises. If you let me in, you can live forever.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you let me in, you can live forever. Um, Back then, this was through the form of baptism. This was in the 1500s, where the
Mm-hmm.
Choctaw said, okay, many of the Choctaw are considered to be Baptists today.
Wow. Wow. And yeah, and I was just kind of looking up some things while you were speaking. Like there's definitely a connection between the Choctaw and the Irish in Mississippi. And just some things that I found were the Choctaw were they were originally obviously from the Southeast U.S., but they were among the first indigenous groups to be forcibly removed. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how they I guess got to the area. Also, the Irish. Obviously, they came, around that time due to the Great Famine that they were experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it seems like there's a lot of interconnection between the two nations. In Cork, Ireland, there's a sculpture called Kindred Spirits, which was erected in 2017 to honor the Choctaw and their donations to the Irish famine in 1847. So, wow, that's something that I wouldn't have, because I was wondering, and like, so, but what did you make of in the movie when the Choctaw were chasing old dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like what did you make of that? Because they they clearly had him on the run, but then when it started getting dark, they was like, man, shit, you're on your own. I'm about to head out.
Yeah. Well, considering the time period as far
Mhm.
as actual historical, we know this is a fictional story.
Yeah.
Um, but considering the time period, if you want to factor in the actual facts of the history of that area, it will be considered that they have been hunting the vampires for a very long time. They know how they work. They
Hmm.
know what the weaknesses is, and so on and so forth. And they were trying to get that one,
Mm.
and they
Hmm.
couldn't get him because he ran into the house. He was accepted, and you saw the vultures, by the way, in
Yeah.
that clip.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do want to touch on that.
Hmm.
But they couldn't get him. So their knowledge and their understanding of what a vampire can do, they're like, you know what? They're gonna get bit. The vultures are here. It's over with. We got our omen.
Right.
And
Right.
in Hoodoo, there is a understanding, and also, if I'm not mistaken, the vulture serves as gives the same omen to the Choctaw. Um, that if there are, we call them buzzards.
Yeah.
If there are buzzards around, death is near, danger is near,
Hmm.
you know. And considering that they came in and you seen the buzzards on the house, it was three of
Hmm.
them. And usually in Hoodoo we say things happen in threes.
Hmm.
And so I'm assuming where they were going with that concept in centers is that they caught on and said, you know what, is over with. If you, and they said a prayer,
Hmm.
as you can see, um, which is actually reflective of their history of being Baptist and so on and so forth. They said a prayer, and they said, I gotta go
Yeah.
because I know how this
How does?
runs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And going back to that area as well, as far as like the sunflower plantation and being linked to the Sunflower River.
Mm.
um the Sunflower River is connected to the Mississippi Delta, and this area is actually the birthplace of Mississippi Delta blues,
Mm, mm,
which is connected to Chicago blues because um, of the Mississippi Valley. So,
mm-hmm.
what a lot of people don't know is that people who are South Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, Missouri, Arkansas, uh, those who are Illinois, Michigan, so on and so forth. This is called the Mississippi Valley. This is where
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
Mississippi River runs. And I would tell people, "Hey, I'm Mississippi Valley," and they like, "Yeah, I know all Chicago people. They y'all from Mississippi." I say, "No, it's a whole region.
Yeah.
It's a whole region.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
you right because of Great Migration, which
Hmm.
is something that Ryan Krugler wanted to touch on. And
Hmm.
he really did a great job in
Hmm.
focusing on the connection of the
Hmm.
Great Migration and how it affected um, people of today, both in
Yeah.
the South and
In the Midwest.
also that
Yeah.
went towards North. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, real talk. Yeah, I appreciated that aspect too. One part of the movie when one of the vampires was standing in the door, and Annie, who I guess she thought he was a Haint at the time, she was like, "You dead?" And I laughed, right? Because it just kind of shows that of, the idea of life and death and an African cosmology is totally different than what might be, considered death in European cosmology. I know it's tough for you to kind of contrast because you grew up in this, right? And so, but like, what is death as far as like from a hoodoo lens?
Well, my mama, all she do is talk to spirits.
Hmm.
Um, And so just trying to compare and contrast is a little hard for me. But if
Hmm.
I come to think about it academically and also with my cultural studies, I believe what you're referring to is how, some people would think that once you're gone, you're gone. But according to us, we don't believe in that. Spirit continues to live on, whether it's elevated or not. And it can come in the form of any type of spirit or different type of spirits.
Hmm.
Um, so those who may be called earthbound spirits, you know, and a lot of people don't believe in earthbound. Ain't no ghosts here, so on and so forth. And you get the people that say, "I see the ghosts," or and then in a hoodoo perspective, um, we have the understanding that there are other supernatural beings that can actually take on the dead bodies, such as the Haint, um, well, yeah, the hate in a way of possession.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
then you have the hag that can actually just take on the skin. And
Hmm.
then, vampires have a way of doing that too. Um, Hence the transferring the memories in the movie and taking on everything. Um, Essentially, the person became a vampire, but that's not who they are. Now they're dead.
Yeah.
They say if you cannot see the reflection in the mirror, which is something that um, those who are dead, vampires as well, in hoodoo, if you cannot see the reflection of the mirror in your mirror, then you're dead. They say because you don't have the soul, it's just the skin.
Mhm. Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, see that again, like just understanding our our concepts culturally, not just in the film, but historically, right? Since we got to this country, you can see the connections with Africa extremely Yeah, I mean, it's there. It's right there, right? It's like you don't. I mean, if you know what you're looking at, you don't even have to guess about it. Um, there are movements now that seem to be, and I think they have their own reasons and agendas, obviously, but they would like to divorce uh, hoodoo in some cases from us being African. And I've seen other cases where the some appropriators who aren't black at all are saying that hoodoo is not necessarily even a black thing. What would you say to those people?
A hoodoo is definitely an African-based system born in the U.S. Hoodoo, the name with it, well, yes, the name
Mm,
within itself, hoodoo, is African and
mhm,
is rooted in African terminology, you know. Um, and these terms come from Benin, and they also come from Ghana. Um, Udu in voodoo, uh,
mm,
meaning spirit.
mhm,
And because there are several people of West Africa that came into the US um, who had similar words to describe spirit or even spiritual medicine,
mhm,
um, there was a linguistic um, play on words where the word voodoo would actually be synonymous with hoodoo because of the tongue of the people, you
mhm,
know. So to say that it is an African, it's crazy because the word in of
mhm.
itself is African. Actually, there are anthropologists that went over to Africa and said, "Wait a minute, the only time I heard anything that sounds similar to this was over in the US. There's a connection." And what I mean, I'm talking about the verbiage of how
Mhm,
to express what spirit is.
mhm,
It may have come out voodoo or whatever, voodoo, whatever the heck they were, how they said it
mhm.
in their tongue or how it flew off their tongue, but it sounded very similar. And I forgot the anthropologist's name. It may come to me later, but there's records of this.
Yeah.
There's records of this. In addition to that, there are several people recorded saying that they have ancestors from Africa.
Right.
Howlin' Wolf is one of them.
Right, 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 right. Absolutely. And just the idea of Crossroads itself and Congo traditions, like, I mean, it's right there. You know what I'm saying?
It's definitely right there. Even many of our words are African based
Mhm,
um, that we use in hoodoo. Uh, uh, for example, there are titles called Wanga Therese. You
mm,
know, that comes from the word Wanga, but the word Wanga comes from um, Ghana.
mm,
Yeah. So, things like that. Goober,
mm.
that's not an English word. It's a
Right,
Kikongo word,
right.
meaning groundnut.
Mm,
Goober, what's a groundnut? It's a peanut here. We call peanuts groundnuts, you know.
right.
Yams,
Right,
meaning
right.
to eat from
Mhm,
the fula. It's tilapia, kikongo, meaning
mhm,
fish.
mhm,
Chimpanzee, toad. I can keep going on.
mhm,
Um, so I think those who are not African American trying to say that it is not indicative to African Americans, they don't know what it is. They only
mhm.
narrow it down to plants.
Yeah, right.
And it is not just plants, it's the whole science behind it that was actually born here in the US. And this is because of the misinformation of those who want to say that they are hoodoo practitioners, um, in a sense. by saying, "Oh, I just work the roots and that's it." But if you can get a little deep when it comes to root working, and we know it's not just plants.
Yeah.
A, a part of root working is working with animal parts,
Mm.
conjuring up the essence and also the spirits of the animals. Because many of our recipes actually, especially the old school recipes,
Hmm.
include some type of fat, flesh, or bone.
Hmm. Which you
Hence
can
what
see
Annie
in a
said.
lot of African traditions as well. But go ahead. What did Annie say?
When she awakened the mojo
Oh
bag.
yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the mojo bag itself we find in Africa, but there was a time where hoodoo and was so ingrained in our culture that people would go to church with their mojo bags.
Absolutely.
You
Into
know?
the 1970s. Yep.
Wow, wow.
Into it was yeah, it was at the late 1960s or the early 1970s where the preachers will say, you don't need this anymore. You're putting more faith into the bad than you are of God,
Mm,
and then they were convincing
hmm.
people with coal that it doesn't mean no more than this lump of coal, so you can get rid of the bag,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. But there's a group of people called the Wolof that
Hmm.
actually came into New Orleans with the concept of the Gree bag,
Hmm.
and also by Dr. John, who was actually of the intracontinental slave trade, who was a man from the Congo, taken to Cuba and then into Louisiana, New Orleans, that actually, um, intertwined this concept of the Gree bag. Today, you will
Mm.
see roll-ups with this bag.
Right,
Uh,
right.
Today, Gree is actually an indicative name that was first used in by the Senegalese and the Senegambian people uh, to explain what this bag is, and it is the name of it is intertwined with a French tongue.
Hmm.
We know that they were colonized by the French, and New Orleans is the French
Yeah, right.
territory.
Hmm.
Today, you can look in the census records and see um, people with the last name Senegal.
Wow.
This is because they were from Senegal.
Right, 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 right. That's beautiful. Um, you you mentioned when Annie was making him the Mojo bag. Was that John that she was using?
So the bag in of itself, she never opened it up.
Okay. Hmm.
So High John was mentioned in the shop when the two little girls came in asking, can they get a pinch of High John?
Hmm.
And High John is worked um, via the root hole. There's a male, there's also a female. That's secret there, and I ain't gonna tell it here. But then there also you can grind it up into a powder and
Hmm.
also use it within your workings. And usually the point of using Hygiene is so that you can overcome any type of struggle that you may be going through. It doesn't matter if it's love, money, whatever.
Hmm.
Hygiene is said to have left his spirit in the root to help those who were going through struggle here on this
Hmm.
land that was connected to the transatlantic slave trade or and the intracontinental slave trade.
Yeah.
Um, so with the Mojo bag, what she did is she had when it comes to these bags, whether it's you call it Toby, Jomo, Mojo, Gree, Wenga, whatever, they have to be fed.
Mm. And
And
that's what she was doing,
feeding,
right?
she was feeding the bags. If you don't feed it, they go to sleep. If you Because that's how you birth them.
Mm.
Again, we birth them with certain elements that
Hmm.
I've already named.
Hmm.
And so these bags are considered to hold a spirit. The outer is the skin, and
Hmm.
then the inside is the organs.
Mm.
And so what she did is she took whiskey, which is the primary alcohol in hoodoo,
Hmm.
and also very much connected to the South. And she took whiskey And what she did is she poured whiskey in the four corners, representing in Hoodoo we would say the four corners of the world, the spirits of the four corners of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went and she poured whiskey onto the bat to awaken it and also allow it to drink. It is said in Hoodoo, spirits love whiskey. That's what we say. Spirits love whiskey. And then what she did, she took it and she said that incantation that I mentioned before to bring it a little bit more to life to help protect smoke. And
Mm.
she gave it back.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. And I want to give people a historical significance of this as well. In 1822, they say Gullah Jack was who was a co-conspirator in the Denmark Vesey revolt, was giving out mojo bags and Ha John the Conqueror, and even Frederick Douglass was given some Ha John the Conqueror that and was told that his master would never put a hand on him again. And after that, I believe Frederick Douglass whooped his ass and he never touched him again. But these are
Mm,
historical accounts that are written about. I like to kind of bring it back there where people just where for the people that may not know how culturally ingrained a lot of these hoodoo practices were in the South and Midwest. Like it wasn't just a type of fringe type of thing.
mhm.
It was part of our lives. It was part of our worldview. It was part of who we were. Um, the last question I want to ask you, and again, thank you for your time. It's always appreciated and valued. When it comes to hoodoo and the preservation of hoodoo and our cultural practices, how is hoodoo preserved, and who keeps it going? Who keeps these cultural ideas and concepts and traditions going in a world where you know a lot of people may not seem to even care about having certain types of connections to the past.
To be honest, those who are chosen to, because this
Hmm.
is something that has gone on forever.
Hmm.
You would even see it reflected in the movie Sinners.
Hmm.
Um, they told Annie, "Don't be bringing that Louisiana, New
Yeah,
Orleans
yeah,
voodoo up in here,
yeah.
or hoodoo up in here." You know, um, you know, everyone is not meant to practice. Everyone is not meant to carry the cultural torch. Everyone is not meant to be a genealogist. Everyone is not meant to understand the importance of the past. But there, in every generation, there are people that come down and are born with the destiny to try to keep that alive.
Mm,
And those who are called to do it on a serious note um, are the ones that are destined to do it. And if it's in their destiny, they tend to make a mark. They tend to reach many people. And I don't think this is going to um, cease to
mm.
exist.
Yeah,
I
right.
don't think it's going to cease to exist. What they always say, history repeats itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Have you seen a resurgence of people being interested in hoodoo?
that's what I was getting ready to say.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, and so my grandmother and her sisters had a candle shop.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
before I was born, and when my father was a a boy and a teenager,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Those candle shops in Chicago, hoodoo is it's a lot of hoodoo in Chicago, but those candle shops are not necessarily here like that
Hmm.
anymore in Chicago anymore.
Right.
However, because of the interest of African spirituality, there is a resurgence of what's called botanicas. People will bring
Yeah.
in botanicas now because
Hmm.
now people are uh, trying their best to hold on to their spiritual roots, you
I
know.
just want more black-owned ones because a lot of these are
Yes.
not us that I
But
see.
that's what I'm saying. A lot of
Mhm.
black owned ones, at least here in Chicago, popping
Mhm.
up more and
Good.
more.
Okay, good, good, good.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yes, more and more. But back then we called them candle shops. They're
Mm.
now being called botanicas because of, what history has done where, you know, we already talked about it, how the black church said, you don't need that no more, so on and
Mhm.
so forth. So if you convince some people that you don't need something that a service or a store will provide, those stores will what? They will
Go out of business,
eventually
yeah.
go out of business.
Hmm. So they kind of had to
However,
not rebrand, but kind of present
mhm,
itself differently, right?
yeah, absolutely. And so now there's a presentation of it in a little bit of in a different way. And this has happened many times,
Hmm.
There's plantation hoodoo.
See,
There's
I was just about
post-plantation
to
hoodoo.
ask you. So this is we got to all right. We got to talk about this real quick. And
Hmm.
I'm sorry because it's important. And I first learned the concept in the professor Katrina Hazard Donald's book Mojo Working, right?
Hmm.
Just like everything, right? There's a commercial aspect that came later with
Hmm.
Hoodoo. As we can see, like a commercial aspect with Christianity, where people make money and profit off of it, or Islam, there are people that make money and profit off of it, and that's what happens, in a money-hungry capitalist society. But
Hmm.
she was kind of explaining that what you see as the commercialized hoodoo is not necessarily what plantation hoodoo is. Can you talk about that some?
It's really a little bit of both, to
Hmm.
be honest,
Okay.
because um, there are participants, and I talked about commercialized hoodoo from a different perspective, really for what it is in an unbiased way.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the movie Sinners. And if you notice that, of course, we said the spiritual understanding and the cultural understanding is intertwined together, but
Hmm.
everyone's um, goal is financial freedom to become free. You see this free, 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 free. Talk
Hmm.
about that all the time. You was never going to be free. That's
Hmm.
what we
Right.
say. Um, but even in at this at the point of the Civil War. Remember the twins? They were Civil War veterans,
Right,
right?
right, right, right.
They were Civil War veterans. You had doctors, you had conjurers, so on and so forth. Like I said, they would have temples, but
Hmm.
this stuff had to be funded, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah, yeah,
And
sure.
so, although it's not commercialized,
Hmm.
um, there
It's
was an
still,
aspect that it still had to be paid for. Nothing
yeah.
is ever free.
Yeah.
Nothing was ever free. Not even
Mhm.
in Africa before we got here.
Because
Uh,
wouldn't there be instances where somebody wouldn't pay and then they'd get some work done on them? Like I've read these stories because there's a cultural anthropologist that compiled like 4 or 5 volumes of just you know
mhm,
narratives of that were mm, a lot of people may consider hoodoo, and that would be a thing that I read personally where oh such and such didn't pay for some work that I did on, and now I'm about to do some work on him. Like that was a thing, right?
mhm. Yes, yes, absolutely, because it's the understanding of energy exchange.
Yeah.
Now, the commercialized version, what they did is exploited it
Mm,
in a
hmm.
sense where it was to the point where it became snake salesmen.
Yeah. Hmm.
There's a history behind that. There is real snake oil,
Mm,
which actually came from China.
hmm. Hmm.
And you notice the Chinese is mentioned in
In the
in
movie,
in the
yeah.
movie, because they have a historical footing in the Mississippi Delta. But the snake salesman was white American
Hmm.
who pretended to sell authentic snake oil.
Hmm.
At first, he claimed that it came from snakes here, but authentic snake oil had snakes that was literally from China. And
Mm.
that particular snake had medicinal properties.
As we can see, certain medicines are made from snake venom now.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. And what happened was is that the snake salesman not only was not selling snake oil of any sorts, he was just selling olive oil. And so that is what the marketeered, commercialized hoodoo is. And you see these things where there will people that will hang on to what is very popular
Mhm.
and resell it, even though they don't know anything about it.
Mhm.
That's what that is. So, for example, I cannot tell you how many times I have seen people selling fake Adam and Eve root. It's not real.
Mhm.
It's a piece of Balma and acorn, and they have been doing that for the longest. But those who
Wow.
do not know
Mhm.
don't know that that is not real Adam and Eve root,
Right.
which
Right.
is from the iris family. And, it's a lot. I can go into that.
Mhm.
But that's essentially snake oil
Mhm.
sales,
Yeah.
commercialized hoodoo
Mm.
versus the one that is authentic. So I don't want to say post plantation hoodoo is not authentic because it definitely
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
because those who are of the post plantation hoodoo are also interconnected and connected to those who were on the plantation. I'm almost 40. I'm not that far away. Yeah, so that's great grandmother.
Yeah, that was about to say me too, and like start getting back to
It's
great grandparents and great
not
grandparents.
that
Slavery is
far
right
away.
there. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Real
not
talk.
it's not that many generations.
Hmm.
Um and so those who came a lot of the people that brought the aspects of post plantation hoodoo, parents were enslaved.
Hmm.
You know, we
Hmm.
we got Frizzly Rooster, so on and so forth. Um, who was said to actually be already in his 40s when Zora and Hurston got to him in
Wow.
the 1930s,
Wow. Hmm.
So he passed down his secrets to her.
Yeah.
So, this is all the way into the 1930s, though. He was passing down those secrets, but that was a direct form of, you know, non-breaking of the
Of the
antebellum
line. Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, it just gets a little janky when people, like you say, start making things up,
Yeah.
you know.
Right. Right. Um,
Hmm.
Mama Yana, again, this has been an amazing talk and amazing discussion. For anybody that would like to, follow you and get more information, let the people know how to do so.
I am primarily on Facebook, which is The Hoodoo Culture by Mama Yana. Um, and then I do have a YouTube. It's not really active. Well, I'm not really active on it,
Hmm.
um, which is called Mama Yana. And then I also have a Patreon where I give a lot of exclusive content, which is under Mama Yana. I believe it's Mama Diana Janae Yana, something like that. But you will see it. You will see when you type in Mama Yana, you're gonna see my name pop up. And that Patreon has almost 1,000 posts already. So of exclusive content, it's a lot of things that I share, articles. You can read things that I've dug up. Um, you know.
Indeed, indeed. Again, everybody, y'all make sure y'all go and support Mama Yana. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your breakdown and your expertise. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.